would you be outside? You might as well watch us. It's absolutely pouring down out there. This in my area, northeast England, absolutely pouring down. Quickly talking to Crimpline, he said for once in Manchester it's dry, but I still think you've got a good excuse to stay in and watch our review today. As you know, we've been looking at a couple of introductory stories for doctors. Last week we looked at Rose, and actually, against my better judgment, the whole panel did actually kind of agree that that was down as outstanding for the reasons that are listed in the show. Go and find it. We did it only just last week. But today, of course, we're going to be looking at the 11th Hour because it's mooted as probably the best introduction story of all the Doctor Who stories. Now, that will be tested quite early on in the show today, but that is what a lot of people say. So I've just put it out there. But as you know, I need a panel. I need people who will actually help me with this review. If it was me, it wouldn't have been outstanding last week, you see. So we do need a panel. So basically, let's have a look. Let's see. Let's troll through, see who I've got. Let's have a look. We've got Michelle. We're going across the pond. Is it raining there?
No, it's actually beautiful today. Spring has finally sprung.
Right, get off. I want no envy. I can't have this. Right.
It's been raining, so I feel your pain.
I don't want time travel. I want space. I just want to get over there. Sun. And let's check in on Glasgow. How's the Glasgow weather?
It's nice now. It was deeply unpleasant this morning, but it is bright and sunny, if chilly. It's bloody cold.
John, is he telling the truth?
Very much so, but it's always sunny where I am.
And you've got your dickie.
Yes. I'm glad it's quite a petite one against all the rumours. Yeah.
Right.
That's not the same thing it means in the United States, people.
And sizes and everything. At least he's got one. And of course, have you got a dickie, Noel?
I haven't. No, unfortunately, I don't. I have David Tennant's screwdriver, if that counts.
I think we get metaphorical.
But I know it's the wrong doctor, but Ted doesn't like the screwdriver. Sorry, buddy. Sorry.
Well, he used it in this episode, so he did use it. He did use the Tennant screwdriver, so that's fair.
Yeah, he did for a few. He did for a while, didn't he? Yeah. But the weather is great here too.
What?
Nice and sunny as well, and it's actually pretty warm here as well.
Here we go. You don't have to labour it, all right.
Brendan, before we continue, I just noticed that a message from Michael Q in the chat. Just to let him know, Elsie, of note, is not my wife. She's one of my spaniels. So,
well, yes, I think that would
cause a sense fear, Elsie, which is like the Blue Peter dog, so.
Well, to be honest, since you've brought that up, John, and since Michael's brought it up with the wrong assumption, I might as well go early on my subscription plea. So this week, as you know, when I request, I beg, I plead for subscriptions, I normally say that I can convert them to galactic credits to help some of our animals and species and people in the Whoniverse. This time it's the Garm. And the Garm, bless him, since you last saw him in the 1980s, he has been looking after everybody there, He hasn't gone away. So if we had more subscriptions and galactic credits, we could get him doggy daycare. We could actually let him go and have a nice rest, some respite. If that doesn't appeal to you, the other thing we can do, never mind doggy daycare, is we can maybe get him a lady friend. And so a Garmess. There you go. What about that? I tell you what, this is what your subscriptions will get. We could get the Garm, who's been on his Todd, working hard, a lady Garmess, and make him happy for once. Because he lost Nissa, didn't he? Remember, she was dropping the kegs for him. But yeah, and there you go. There's John's wife. There you go.
There's my little fella.
Well, the good news is I did get a message from Nissa. She was able to get him house trained.
Elsie has decided the Garm is not her type.
Yeah.
So,
Ted, there's Elsie. Say hello to Elsie, Ted.
Oh, there we go.
Here's Teddy.
And my three are at the groomers today, so no poodle sightings today.
This This is turning into Crufts. So I'll just remind everybody that's our next target. And thank you for those who've subscribed so far. And let's see how far we can get. We are pumping out the programs, I tell you. So please check out our latest one. That went down a storm. Obviously, it's still out there. There's an argument about whether the Doctor's character's changed or not. But I tell you what, nobody sits on the fence with that one. Now, as per usual, before we do look at this in detail, the 11th hour review, I'm just going to surprise you a lot because, of course, it's important that because we are talking about stuff and we're debating stuff, and sometimes it's controversial, I do need everybody to be aware that I've warned you before, I could actually, use one of my test cards, I could mute, but I'm going to use what Davros did. He had his self-destruct button. There you go, total destruction. Out. So
I love a big button.
Yeah, I love a big button, a big red button. So basically,
Big chocolate button.
If the debate kicks off, I'm going to just, that's it. And I tell you what, if I have to give individual warnings, they can choose their own possible sanctions. So, for example, our panelists could be. Let me just get them in so you can see them squirming. Let's have a look. Here we go. They're not showing you at the moment. They'll come in. Right. Let's have a look. We could have them all turned into Fenderline. They could be on that altar sacrifice. If you don't fancy that type of sacrifice, folks, what about the Helix? What about, Hieronymus and all them? Poor Sarah was in the midst of that. Or we could go back to the Aztecs. You could be one of the first victims of Toloxapatum. Yeah, too many X's. Good at Scrabble, though. Or the lovely Excellence. They're like, you could die with them singing to you if you like a male voice choir. So that's not a bad one. So take your choice, folks. Oh, he's writing them down. John's writing them down. I've chosen chosen which sacrifice you want.
Get your hands off my dicky. That's the most important thing. So you're not touching that.
There you go.
Well, we did have those eclipse yesterday in North America, so no virgins were sacrificed.
Well, that's good. So just a quick reminder, I know you can freeze frame this. I'm only going to show it for a second. There's all the ways you can actually contact us and get through to us. And of course, we're now going to embark on the 11th hour review. Now, first thing, you see, this is it. It's called cheap entertainment, this, folks.
I'll keep the thing ticking over. Don't worry.
So 11th hour. I'm going to go straight for it, and I'm going to say, right, you've watched now Rose, you've watched the 11th hour, you've obviously seen others because we're all Doctor Who fans. So I'm going to throw in the first question, even before we get to the burning issues of this episode. Here you go. What was the best Doctor introduction story? Because as I said in my thumbnail, some are arguing it is the 11th hour. Now, I've actually quickly color-coded my versions, but they're only mine. So green is better than kind of amberish. And of course, red is no way. But that's only my choice. So if I leave that up for a second, folks, has anybody got any definite no-nos as one of the worst introductions of a Doctor? Because it is the introduction of the Doctor. That's why I've got the Doctor Who movie. Once it got going, was all right, but the trouble was it was great to see Sylvester, but the trouble was it wasn't introducing the character properly and for long enough. Anyway, if I went around the panel, John, tell us your favourite Doctor Who introduction story.
Without a doubt, Spearhead from Space. Without a doubt, absolutely. As much as I would love to see An Unearthly Child, that is but one episode, not the whole story. So if I'm picking a story rather than an individual episode, it's Spearhead from Space. It is fantastic. It's a lingering memory from me, from my childhood. I watched it first time, I watched it on the repeat, and I couldn't wait for the VHS. And when the VHS arrived, it didn't disappoint. It does everything it needs to do. It reintroduces Doctor Who, it reboots Doctor Who, it lifts those series, and it gives John Pertwee just the most fantastic of openings, and he is the Doctor straight away, no messing about. And it's also got the fabulous and forever wonderful Nicholas Courtney as the Brigadier in it. What's not to like?
Well, I'm still on you, John. Your worst one.
Oh, James. I would probably have to say,
Sound effects.
I want to say the twin dilemma, but I feel that's unfair on Colin because Colin does a good performance. But I have to say the twin dilemma because it is just gaudy, awful, badly acted. It sums up everything that became bad about Doctor Who in the 80s. And if you really wanted to show a story to someone to confirm all their bad points about what they think Doctor Who is or became, that's the one you would show them. And it would confirm all their sort of preconceived notions about Doctor Who.
I mean, as I go down the panel and ask your opinions on the best and the worst regarding introductions to the Doctor, it's interesting what John's saying there because the twin dilemma, I don't think is the worst as a story, but I do think there's a problem in you're introducing a facet of the Doctor which became problematic, and that's therefore, in my case, not a very good introduction, John.
Well, I'm not. Yeah, you're quite right in that. But I'll judge that separately. That's a fault of the characterization of the Sixth Doctor, which stretches across more than one story. I'm just talking about how it's produced, directed, costume designed, set designed, and everything. Everything in that 4 episodes sums up what was wrong ultimately about 1980s Who, and it's the sort of story you would want to hide away from fans because, as I say, it confirms those notions about what Doctor Who looked like, sounded like, and acted like in the 1980s.
Yeah. Michelle, your best and your worst, and why?
Okay, my best. Even though Deep Breath was my first introduction to Doctor Who and got me on the Doctor Who bandwagon, I'm going to have to go with An Unearthly Child because that's this one that set everything up. It's just that one episode alone is what carries that 4 episodes. You know, it's not the greatest story per se, but that episode is just so genius. And there's really An Unearthly Child and Rose, in my opinion, are 2 episodes that you don't have to know anything about the series to get instantly. And those 2 are genius. But because Unearthly Child comes first and it was the one that starts this whole series, I'm going to have to go with An Unearthly Child being the best. For the worst is going to be Twin Dilemma for that scene. It was just so unforgivable what they did to the character to have him do that to Perry. And also it's always going to be because the Kaiser Van Zandt was so brilliant, and then to go down to so low afterwards. It's just, and Colin was brilliant, and there's some great scenes in there of Colin and Nicola O'Brien working together. But the whole scene just should have ended up on the cutting room floor. I can't imagine anybody like, okay, that's a good idea. Let's do that.
Well, I saw you nodding and I saw your thumbs up. So where are you going with this, Hugh?
Right. So I agree with everything everyone said, but I'll pick something different just in terms of it doing something different and doing something for the first time, which is Power of the Daleks, because Troughton is amazing.
Yeah.
And it's, given the fact that that's the first one to do it,
Yeah.
that's what's allowed it to happen so many times. And it's, I mean, I'm sort of picking that because I would go with An Unearthly Child for the same reason as Michelle. And as I've said, it's the greatest piece of television I've ever seen for 25 minutes. But I think in some ways, Power of the Daleks and Troughton's performance in that is the only reason why we have Doctor Who today.
And what was your worst again? Sorry.
So the worst, I mean, yeah, I agree with, again, all the things on the Twin Dilemma that's been said. I would have to say, in terms of a visceral gut reaction to hating it, it was the movie because of the half-human thing.
Yeah. I'll just quickly throw mine in. No need for me to really explain them because some things have been said, and then I'll come to Noel. But I am torn between Unearthly Child and Power of the Daleks. It's unfortunate that it's only left in animation form, so you try your best. Obviously, listen to the audio and that. But I do wonder whether Unearthly Child, I have to say, and I go with Michelle here, really. And I know Hugh was dancing around on that one as well, because it set up everything, absolutely everything, and it did it with a deft of dialogue, and strokes there. you know, you were introducing the whole concept of time and space travel in a police box, and they get away with it. You took the risk of making your hero not look like one. You made it go through the viewpoint of the companions, which they seem to do quite a lot. So it set that template up. And it established that, you know, that there was a problem with, you know, as it were, we guess Susan's the time one. So I just think that one in the end, for me, and for the worst, I'm going to actually say, I know it's a toss-up between a few, I'm going to say Time and Arani. I just struggled. I watched Trin Dilemma and I could live with it in parts. There were some parts I really liked. And my measure is my mum hates Doctor Who, but she sat with Trin Dilemma and she loved Colin. So it must have done something. Time and Arani, I was embarrassed to watch. I was embarrassed. I just thought, what are we doing? It needed incidental music. It needed stuff. Poor Sylvester was acting as himself in this new persona, and you could hear the studio set. It was just clunky, and having this whole Rani thing with, you know, Bonnie. You know, I know John's going to be jumping at it, but I'll let Noel come in. Noel, your best and your worst.
Well, I'm going to come at this at a slightly different angle. So I do agree with John's choices, classic, but I think it's unfair to kind of put the New Who episodes in there, because the best New Who introduction episode is the 11th Hour, and I think the worst in New Who is The Woman Who Fell to Earth. So that's how I would have split them up. I think it kind of is unfair because they're two. You've got to remember as well, classic Who and New Who are completely different. They're not the same. They're not the same show. So I would have to agree with John. I think Spearhead from Space. I mean, John Pertwee's introduction is absolutely fantastic. I love his era, by the way. His era is. I don't know. I don't know whether it's criminally underrated, but I feel it is underrated. Maybe with fans out there, but I absolutely love it. Twin Dilemma. I mean, everybody said what I had to say. Look, I don't like Colin Baker anyway. I think he's. Look, I don't like him as the Doctor, and I don't like him as a bloke. He comes across as an arrogant sod, so I've never really warmed to his Doctor. But again, New Who for me, if you're going for a best introduction episode, it is the 11th Hour, and the worst introduction is The Woman Who Fell to Earth. I mean, I don't care if it got 13 million viewers watching. That doesn't mean it was great. The Woman Who Fell to Earth totally changed who the Doctor was. Character was completely changed. So I think when you're, it's up to you, but that's how I'm judging this, because they're two different shows in my opinion. So, you know, they've got the name Doctor Who. It is still, New Who is still Doctor Who, but do you know what I mean? It's not like the classic era. So they are two separate. That's why it's called New Who and Classic Who. That's why there's that distinction.
As you started this answer, I just thought it brought my teacher assessment days back, and I thought, you always change the parameters. It's classic Noel. You always change the parameters, which is good. It's fine. And it made me laugh, because I thought, I tell you what, you could set an exam for Noel and he'll say that it will change the rules. But yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Does anyone want to come back on anything that's been said by any of the panelists regarding any of the comments?
Yes, you. I'm coming back at you, Brendan. Surprisingly.
I know you like
Rani. You know, I have a little place in my heart for Time in the Rani. And the reason I have that little place in my heart is because it was the one time that Doctor Who was produced by Aaron Spelling. That's what Doctor Who would look like had GNT had his way throughout and not had a script editor looking over his shoulder or a director who had no cojones. So, and for a one-off, it's an event. It's nice to see. It's just an experiment. And to that extent, I enjoy the big shoulder pads. I enjoy the big hair. I enjoy the flashy costumes. And I enjoy the big pink set for one story. Other than that, I wouldn't like it to go on. But as it stands, I'm very fond of it because it sits right in the middle of that Dallas and Dynasty period where the hair was big, the shoulders were big, and the stories were even bigger.
Do you know, for a second when I thought, oh, I'm going to have to get near that button. If you
That's
don't like that button, though, would this be tempting, John? If I was going to reach like Davros for that button, thinking, oh, we're going to have a debate. What about this? Would that work? Because that was his still self-destruct button. Remember when he threatened the Paradigm Daleks?
Jammy, yes, I'd rather have a couple of jammy dodgers. And if you do press that button, I might explode.
Yeah.
Oh, God. I tell you what, all this constant encouragement. So, right, come on then. 11th hour review. Let us start with, and you know where I normally start. We normally start with, what is it?
Burning issues.
Burning issues.
Burning issues. Oh, we get it an echo with that. Right, okay, let's start us off, change the screen. But right, who wants to start off on what really got to them in this iteration? Because I've got a few. Noel was saying on Friday, yes, I've got a few, Noel, don't you worry. Hugh, where would you like to start? Any issues that you had with this episode?
So I suppose the issue I have, if on a negative side, is that it's where the companion becomes the story, and it becomes somewhat fated, and everything's to do with Amy, Amelia, and that sort of presages all the way through that era, and that's a difficult one. I think watching it at first, I had no real appreciation that was going to happen. So it was easier, and every time I watch it now, I'm going, oh, that's that bit. I know what's going to happen now, and I know I'm going to object to it. I think sort of like the other part of that then is because Stephen Moffat packs so much into that episode, which then presages the future episodes. It's an odd episode to watch whenever you know it. So I think silence will fall, and you're just going, there we are then. But you didn't appreciate the silence would fall in the next series, not this one.
No, I know. I know we've talked, I don't know, months ago when you pointed out this issue about narrative arcs, or whether it's not a narrative arc, it's just you sow a few seeds of the same reference or something, and that's not clever. And by the way, hello, Rachel. Chat about it, don't shout about it. She's been mentioning a few times there about various things. But yeah, the fish fingers and custard we will come to, I'm sure. Okay, Michelle.
Thinking back, some of the sophomore humor doesn't really hit back. You go back and you realize it's a whole sex jokes. And before that, Doctor Who would have a witty sense of humor to it. You think of the clever wordplay of Tom Baker, or the subtle jabs of John Pertwee, and now we have the get a girlfriend, clear your browser history. The companion looking at the naked doctor. It is kind of this very sophomoric humor of a writer who's perpetually stuck at 12 years old.
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, I don't just want to go around the panel and hear it and we don't debate it. What does everybody think regarding that?
Well,
because I've listed it down to...
Yeah, if you want to come to me now, because that's what I was going to say. So Michelle called it, the Americans call it sophomore humor, we would call it undergraduate humor. I would even say it was undergraduate humor. It's schoolboy humor, rather than it's not as sophisticated as getting to university level. And this is my burning issue with this, because as Hugh rightly says, all the signs are there, are laid down here. When you watch this for the first time, you don't realise what Doctor Who is going to be like over the next few years. And I like Moffat as a writer. I think he's a fantastic imagination. If I had 50% of his imagination, I'd be a very wealthy man indeed in terms of ideas. But he's prone to write drama as sitcom at times, and prone to very schoolboyish humour. To the extent that when they called Douglas Adams schoolboyish, compared to Moffat, Douglas Adams is highly sophisticated, because this Moffat is really schoolboyish, and it is very titillating and very smutty, and we shouldn't be doing this. The influence of this guy's looking at not just porn but gay porn, and then later on when Amy is seen to watch the Doctor undress and get naked while Rory looks away, it's just so out of place in Doctor Who that this is a writer who right at the start is being overindulged. And what they don't realise is by indulging themselves in their own little foibles like this, is that they are really damaging the character by doing this, because once you've done that, you can't undo it, and it just builds, and you end up with a character who is just very mundane, very human, very sexualized, and not this mysterious stranger. Just think back 25 years prior to this episode. She's a very attractive woman, probably. And now we got all this sort of stuff. Now, that's fine. It's funny, and I admit to laughing at it first time round. But looking at it again, 14 years on, and knowing what happened in the Moffat era, all the signs were there that really Moffat needed reining in a bit, and knowing that he was not holding the keys to the kingdom. It was not his show to turn it into Doctor Who the sitcom or Doctor Who the schoolboy humour in half hour. And somebody somewhere should really have edited most of this out. Schoolboy humour, Douglas Adams had it right. That was more sophisticated than anything we get here.
Noel, do you want to come in then on your burning issues? Last week, I think you gave Rose a free pass. Are you giving this one a free pass?
I didn't give Rose a free pass. I mean, I think, most of everybody agreed with me on the panel with it being outstanding for what it did. This week, I don't see. I'm listening to you guys, and I've got to be honest, but I disagree with everything that everybody said so far. I think this is a crack. I've no burning issue with this one. I like the humor. I did like that scene where Amy's looking at him when he's stripping off. I just thought it was funny, and as John mentioned, he did laugh at the time. I mean, we should judge it at the time and not 15 years later, because attitudes have changed, I mean, this episode does lay a lot of groundwork, what's to come. But I have to say, it's one of my favorite stories. I mean, when he gets out of the TARDIS at first and he hits his head off the tree, the whole kitchen scene is hilarious. When he goes back to the house then and he bumps into Amy Older and I mean, I'm sorry guys, but this way I just don't see it. I just
the game we play is obviously, I can have an outstanding episode. I will still find issues because there's nothing.
I don't have any though. I can't sit here and make issues up that I don't see. I don't have
that's fair enough.
Issues with it.
That's what I mean. But I can see things because I'm trying to be trying to see things that could have been done different. And one thing I would take, kind of come back at you on, Noel, is you say, for example, don't judge it because it's 14 years ago. This one, isn't it? It's 3rd of April 2010. And I know what you mean. I totally agree with that. We can't judge from different periods. I don't agree with that. You can't go back and do that. But what we're trying to do in our review is we are trying to see if some seeds of problems were set in place. That's a different issue, isn't it? I mean, we can say we laughed, like John said. I laughed too. We laughed. But when you look at certain things, you're going, "Oh, is this the start of that? The once is fine. Don't do it every week." So. That was the one reason I wanted to come back on Cameron Lazarus, because he was just saying, if I can find him, Archibald Lazarus, Cameron Lazarus. What am I saying? I did not expect people to be so critical of the 11th hour. If you remember what we do, Archibald Lazarus, we start with basically our issues, and then we go through where we might praise it to the rafters afterwards. So. Yeah, the score. We start with our niggles. We start with some of our questions, and then we move on from there. So,
Brendan, can I nip in just based on to keep up to this what we were talking about? And I know it sounds like I've been prurient, but although I laughed at the time, and I know society has changed and the way people look at things has changed as well, but still, I'm debating this purely on is Doctor Who the right place for some of the humans and some of the choices made in this, and absolutely no, it's not, because there's one particular scene where the Doctor wakes up with the handcuffs on, and we see Amy, the grown-up Amy, for the first time. there's a shot, which is an odd choice the director makes to go up her stockinged leg to her miniskirt and linger on that as if the doctor taking in this vision, this leggy lovely, whatever it is. And I thought to myself, absolutely not Doctor Who. It's odd. And the very fact the choice was made to make Amy a strippogram rather than an actual policewoman, so they could dress her and sexily dress her up to make her, if you like, in some way attractive to the Doctor. Again,
Just to say, he's a
me.
kissogram, not a strippogram.
A strippogram, kissogram, whatever.
But
The
yeah,
fact
it's
that
just,
you give an excuse.
in olden times, I had on my CV a kissogram because I once was a kissogram, and I definitely wasn't a strippogram, despite
Okay,
the fact that
she was a kissogram. Okay, wrong choice for her. Kissogram. Nonetheless, the point still remains that this was an opportunity to dress her in a sexy outfit, not make her a real policeman. And fair enough, let's allow that as a writing choice. But then the director chooses to do that shot with the doctor's point of view, looking up her legs to her miniskirt, and you go, "What am I watching here? Is it Carry On, out in space, or is it Doctor Who?" And again, are you talking about signs being sown or seeds being sown for later on? That was very definitely the start of something there.
And never forget when she's running, she's constantly pulling her skirt down because it keeps riding up.
Which is why we've done two versions of this now. Our latest debate was taking one facet of this discussion today and actually looking at how much the Doctor possibly has changed. But I think half the gang here remember when we did Sex in the TARDIS and we were debating some of these points. So just to finish off with my burning issue, some of it's been said, so I won't repeat. But one of them that I know me and Hugh tend to talk about is the safeguarding issue. This is the storyline, isn't it? And it's cute. I mean, the way it's set up, the whole storyline, I think is well crafted by Stephen Moffat. And that it is lovely. And I felt sorry for the little girl when he left. And that moment when she said, everybody says, I'll see you in 5 minutes. And you feel this girl has been let down. And so I get the storyline. The thing that I had a problem with, and I always have done, is this little girl, we find out she's had counselling with 4 different counsellors. She's got toys and drawings of her Raggedy Doctor. He's got into her head, and now she's going to travel with him as an adult. This is a bad message, and this is a very current day message. And I still think, although it's a pretty storyline, it's a problematic storyline.
Yeah, it's almost as if she's been groomed from an early age by the Doctor, isn't it?
That's the snap.
And given that that's a storyline that Moffat's run with in The Girl in the Fireplace.
Yeah.
Yes.
And with Amy, and also with Clara. Once is okay, but then you keep doing it over and over again. That's what we're trying to see there.
It begins to sound like a fixation with the writer, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he'd done coupling, hadn't he? Before he did Doctor Who, he done coupling. And I said this the other day about RTD. I think he's good at doing adult drama. I sometimes think some of these showrunners have a problem doing family with young adults watching drama. Yeah. That's the problem.
And don't forget, there was Ofcom complaints against the kissogram storyline too. That was very controversial when it first aired. There was Ofcom complaints about Amy's career choice.
Why is Amy a kissogram, other than the fact we get to dress her up in a sexy outfit? That's the only reason.
Yeah, and that's where it was. That was what the complaints were for, because it was a family drama.
Yeah, go on here.
Just in terms of Moffat's CV, I mean, the other show that did a number of other shows, but the other show that he did, particularly for sort of like a family audience, is Press Guy, which I think works. But again, we're back at the difference between having 2 kids or who are 17, 18 in terms of the main characters at a school working together, and the power relationship that the Doctor creates.
Yeah. So we're going to go straight into there were 1 or 2 bits there that were picked on. So we're going to go straight into the dialogue Doctors, and we'll pick on. There's only 1 or 2 pieces, and then we're going to hit our criterion, the usual score. Yeah. Well, God, he always starved the show. He likes this new version, does John?
Keep it up. Keep it up.
It's just so we can see your Dickie. So
It can be arranged.
yes, certainly. So on the Dialogue Doctors front this week, a couple of them I just want to show up and see if anyone's got any issues they want to join it. We've been discussing this one, so I don't think we need to elaborate. You're a policewoman, I'm a kissogram. It seemed to make lots of jokes with that. Is it the gran of Jeff? And, you know, you're a nun last week and, you know, all that stuff. Yeah. And French maid. We had all that. So just to show we were onto it. Then my reference to having her counsellor, she's bit them. They didn't think what she was talking about was real. I mean, this you'd actually say this girl's got major problems, therefore she shouldn't be traveling with somebody. It's an abuse of power. But did anyone think, I mean, this is the cute thing, apparently, that he's the raggedy doctor. He's the madman with a box. That was all do you like that reference to the Dr. Noel? That kind of version of, you know, they all have nicknames, I suppose, but do you like the idea that Amy sees him as the raggedy doctor, and when she's with him, she sees him still as the doctor she saw when she was a little girl, that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, when he busts through the TARDIS, he's all raggedy looking, isn't he? So I mean, So I mean, as a child, obviously, she, you know, she seen him and he left an imprint in her, and then obviously he goes back and she remembered him as the raggedy doctor. I don't have any issue with that. I like that nickname, actually. I mean, when she says raggedy doctor at the end of his regeneration, come on.
Yeah.
Everybody was in tears when he regenerated, and when she goes raggedy man and he puts his hand up to her face, everybody's in tears. So I don't have any issue with raggedy man, no.
No, I'm with Noel on that one. The other aspect to it is that he's not just raggedy in terms of his looks, but he's raggedy in terms of his behaviour, which is realistic. So yeah, I'm with Noel on that.
Yeah, it's an adult woman who's still got a childish nickname for the man she's travelling with. So that I'll park my.
Well, because she went and saw a lot of psychiatrists, and they told her that was an imaginary friend. So when you have an imaginary friend, and I think we've all had one when we've grown up, we do call our imaginary friend a name. So this makes total sense.
I think the problem.
I think within we can have our issues about the young Amy and the older Amy, and the doctor's role in that. But the concept of the raggedy doctor and how young Amy or Amelia remembers that is a fantastic concept. It's great, and the fact that you see the little dolls and the drawings and all the rest of it that she did with her psychiatrist and all the rest of it. It's just the whole concept attached to this, that one visit one evening with the doctor has left this young girl and eventually young woman a bit damaged, perhaps.
Last one, because we've talked about the browsing history and having some cheap sexual innuendo jokes. Do you know one thing? I needed to point this out because I've noticed it now with Rose, and Chris Eccleston's Doctor did a kind of an Americanism. We have had some Doctor Who fans not happy with the shooty Doctor in the trailer. And yeah, it goes all the way back to Rose, and it goes all the way back to this, who's the man? And you've got these little kind of phrases that come in. It's been done all the way through New Who, it looks like to me then. You know, we've got these elements. I mean, I can't stand Geronimo and I can't stand Alonzi. I'm very with the John Hurt War Doctor on that one. But who the man? And do you know, going back over these, I'm thinking, do you know what? We can't slag off the shooty Doctor being given these Americanisms. It's been all the way through. They're all there. Don't like them, but they're all there.
I like this. I think in the context of the scene, this is brilliant because 2 minutes to spare. Who's the man? He thinks that he's won, and then we see what happens. Then something goes wrong, and he has to figure it all out again. I don't have any problem with it. See, you've got to remember, Doctor Who now at this stage under Moffat was going. I know it was pretty much bit global, but it wasn't too global. But you've got to remember, this is the time, Moffat's time, when the show was heading towards the 50th anniversary and the American audience was real big on Doctor Who. So, of course, there's going to be a few Americanisms in it. Once it doesn't lose that Britishness, which I don't think it does. It doesn't lose that Britishness. It's in a it's in a little village somewhere in wherever they are. Where are the
Ledworth?
Yeah, so they're in a little village somewhere with a duck pond with no ducks.
Yes.
Right? Well, they're in a little village, so the Britishness is still there. You know, you've got to if you're trying to make Doctor Who appeal to everybody, unfortunately, there's going to be things in it that some fans are not going to like, right? But if it stays at its core, a British show, and has that Britishness through it, then I don't mind the odd reference here or there, or the Doctor showing off sometimes. Because remember, sometimes the Doctor does show off and it backfires. Right?
Yeah. I'm as you know, Noel, I'm just joining the dots. So I'll come to our American friend. I'll just bring Michelle in and see what her viewpoint is on it, because obviously we're obviously trying to reach out to the Americans, obviously. But you know, Michelle, in the recent trailer, there were some fans were unhappy with one of the phrases the Shooty Doctor had. And that's why I brought this up today, and I brought it up last week in Rose, because I thought, hold on a minute, if we're going to slag off that piece of dialogue in the trailer, we've had it before. Now, do you like this? Is it innocent? Do you see my point? Have you got another point, basically, about it?
Well, I see your all points, but I find it's funny. I think the Doctor is still trying to figure out his personality, just being a little bit of cocky. Because remember, he just came back from being a very cocky Doctor under the 10th personality, and he's still regenerating. He's still trying to figure out his personality, and so he's like, "Show who the man," or show me some love, and everybody kind of gives him the look. He's like, "Okay, I'll never do that again." Okay, so that is like he's trying to figure out how to read the room. So I just kind of find that as funny, as the Doctor sometimes being a little too cocky and being, we're put back rightfully in his place by the companion to level him, like, not now, don't show off.
Yeah. I mean, I think you've made that clear. I'll come to John. Did you had something to say, but I will just point that out, because we as fans have discussed the trailers, we've discussed various things, and I'm just showing you. There's a thread all the way through. So if you've got an issue with Shooty's dialogue, I assume you have an issue with that dialogue and Rose last week. That's all I'm saying. John?
Yeah, and again, Michelle sort of beat me to it. How dare she? About get to later. She's quite right. I mean, this is just a one-off. It happens. The Doctor's constantly saying things like this. Let's not get irritated about it. And if the Doctor chosen frame of speech was constantly in Americanisms or colloquialisms belonging to another society, or other than what we know as being sort of English-British, if you like, or British-English, then yeah, you'd have caused a complaint. But it's a one-off, and it happens on a one-off basis with a whole swathe of Doctors too. Remember, when John Pertwee was the Doctor, he used to have a very plummy voice and talk about going down the club with Tommy Rowland and all this sort of stuff. And enjoying a good cigar and glass of wine, all the rest of it. So, there's room for the Doctors to say and do stuff which is not typical of the Doctor as a character throughout. So yeah, I'm cool with this. I'm comfortable with it. As he says himself, he's still cooking. So
And a few people have said that in the thread as well. He's still regenerating, so he's allowed to be erratic and all the rest of it. And as everybody knows, I'm trying to make that link and just say, I'm aware of certain criticisms, so those people who are criticising, I assume you have to be fair across the board.
What I'm saying to you, Brendan, you can go further back than
go
right back to John Pertwee and beyond, no doubt.
Exactly, and so we're making that point. Criteria 1, just for reminders of anybody new to our show, or just for the panelists to have another good look. This is normally the first criteria where we say, did it feel like a Doctor Who episode? And also, did it feel like a safe Doctor Who episode, as in they weren't changing all the rules, they weren't wrecking continuity, like some people say with Timeless Children, so like some people did say about Deadly Assassin, like some people said about the War Games. That's what I'm talking about. And it's up to the panelists how they deal with this criteria, but we are going to judge it objectively. So on that objective criteria, Noel, where would you like to go? What big points would you like to make on that one?
Well, I mean, I think it meets all the criteria that you've put up there, to be quite honest with you. Again, I said I wasn't going to say I'm bad about this episode, and I meant it because I really do like it.
Yeah.
I, look. I understand that we're in a fandom, and fans have different tastes, but I'm sitting here listening to the stuff, and I'm kind of thinking, well, some of this stuff has been done in previous eras, like so. I don't know what the issue is when it's gone back a very, very long time. But yeah, I think it does its job. I think it's a very good introduction episode for a
Yeah,
new Doctor, especially Matt Smith. Because remember, Matt Smith was under a bit of criticism originally when he was cast, especially after that promo image that they put out. That wasn't actually his costume, but they just put a promo image out, and there was a lot of backlash. A lot of people were also claiming that he was too young to play the Doctor, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous. And you know, the younger Doctor appealed to the fan girls in the fandom, and I can understand why they put Amy in the police officer kissogram suit, whatever you want to call it. I could get that. That was to entice the young lads in. There's nothing wrong with that, I don't think either. So I mean, it does. For criteria one, I think it fits all the criteria. I have no issue with this episode whatsoever. None.
Remember, when we do a critique, that doesn't mean we have to pile in on it. So what I'm asking you, Noel, and it's fair enough, is therefore on criteria one, give us a couple of examples where you thought this was classic Doctor Who. This was top Doctor Who stuff. You know what I mean? Where were the scenes that you absolutely thought this is good?
Well, I mean, if you look at the very not the very first scene, but the very first scene in the house when he goes into the bedroom,
yeah,
and he sees the crack on the wall, and he's talking to Amelia. That's classic Doctor Who. The whole scene with him in the kitchen doing the fish fingers and custard, I thought that was very Doctor Who. I mean, there's nothing in this that I don't think wasn't Doctor Who. I have no issue with this episode at all. None. I'm trying to think of one. If I was to think of one, I would say it's a pity it wasn't an hour episode. You could have done you could have stretched things out a little bit more. But other than that, like all the scenes, even the part where when the screwdriver goes under the door and Amy goes into that room and she tells the Doctor that the screwdriver has ended up on, and it jumped up by itself, landed on the, like, that was very scary. That was very Doctor Who. So, I mean, again, you're going to find it very hard to get me to criticize this story or come up with something because I don't have that.
No, I wasn't asking you to. I asked you for your highlights. So, I
mean, that scene is brilliant. Come on, when he's put his ear, and then when he gets the glass, I think it's so he gets the glass and he throws the water out and puts the glass up against the wall. I mean, it's classic Doctor Who. I don't know what else to say really.
You can keep saying good stuff. It's
fine.
I mean,
Prisoner Zero, great concept. I mean, the CGI is a bit bad there, but we'll get into that down further. But Prisoner Zero, the whole concept, the crack of the wall, the prisoner has escaped, the Doctor trying to figure that out, and then he eventually does figure it out, you know, because he's still cooking. He hasn't quite got everything coordinated, but then he does figure out there's an extra room in the house. I mean, it's got all the classic tropes of Doctor Who. I mean, what more could you ask?
I'll bring in a couple of people in the thread before I visit John there. So thank you in the thread. There's an awful lot of interesting comments going on. I'm trying to keep up with them, so I do apologise if I haven't. Let's take a few, and then I'll come to John, like I said. So Michael Nemo says, the TARDIS being destroyed and blowing up is such an unnecessary expense and manipulation. I actually had a little point about that, but I go further back to Logopolis. That scene when they were going to flood the TARDIS, I still don't understand that concept at all. And in this one, when he says the library's in the swimming pool, it's all flippant nonsense, really, and he gets a ladder to get out. I'm getting sick of the TARDIS being used as this kind of stunt vehicle that it never was before. But anyway, that ship has sailed. Now it can capture Ace, and you can land in a bed and all that nonsense. Peter Harrington, Robot for Me, is a strong introduction in the first episode, and then pretty quickly into a fab story. What else did I see? I saw Review It Yourself, Haya. Prisoner Zero must vacate the human residence or the human residence will be incinerated. Classic Who. Do you know what? Review it yourself. I thought that was classic Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy when the Vogons and the highway. There was an element of this episode that felt very Hitchhiker's Douglas Adams, and that's been referred to. John, over to you.
Yeah, look, just because I've taken issue with certain writing choices and directorial choices doesn't mean I don't like this story. I do like it. Is it amongst my favourite stories? No. Is it the best Doctor Who introductory story? Certainly not. But I still enjoy it. It's a good Doctor Who story. And one of the reasons, in terms of criteria, one that makes it a good Doctor Who story, as far as I'm concerned, that this is the point where New Who finally gets a real Doctor, because Matt Smith, until that point, becomes my favourite actor to play the Doctor, because he gets exactly what the Doctor should be. While I enjoy the Eccleston portrayal and I enjoy the Tennant portrayal, Matt Smith very much was born to play this part, not just in terms of his acting abilities and ability to interpret a script, but the physicality he brings to that role is just fantastic. You can obviously see a man who did go and look at Troughton and was aware of the fact that the Doctor has a gait, and that scene towards the end when he's walking on the roof towards Prisoner Zero, he reminds me of Patrick Troughton, the Three Doctors specifically, almost walking bandy-legged style, towards the creature. Yeah. So this is, yes, Protective Doctor Who canon, because it's the first New Who story, I think, which is bang on the money for nailing the character of the Doctor, and the first actor, I think, who 100% gets how the Doctor should be played as an alien. Now, it's unfortunate that the writers are doing other things, other characters around the Doctor at this point, but he absolutely gets a nose right. All that fish fingers, that scene in the kitchen, that's making me laugh, because that is the Doctor. And Moffat shows, again, some good writing choices when he makes it understandable for children, when he says it's a bit like tasting food after you brush your teeth. That's all brilliant stuff. And that exactly would make children sit and understand, oh, I know exactly what the Doctor feels, at the same point as looking at the silly man on screen and that silly physicality he has. And I'm glad you put that picture up there, Brendan, because right at the end, Matt Smith earns his stripe because he's confirmed as the Doctor with a variety of still shots of doctors and companions, and he walks through and says, I'm the Doctor. Brilliant. Well done. So I don't want the impression given I'm here to trash this story. No, absolutely not. What I'm here to do is criticise it where I think it might have went wrong, but this is still a good story, and more to the point, the best thing about this story is Matt Smith as the 11th Doctor. A Doctor, for the first time in New who really was the Doctor.
And this is where we might find on criteria 2, depending on your choice, because criteria 2 could be the choice of actors. And I've already gone big on that because Matt Smith storms it. Remember when he was announced? And I think it was a show on TV, wasn't it? And you saw him for a moment. And of course you thought, God, he's so blooming young. But he was, as John was saying, and I think we're all going to probably talk about Matt Smith big time, especially in criteria 2. But in this one, we're talking about whether this is
just to see why I said this for criterion 1 and not 2 is because it's important for the canon of the programme that Stephen Moffat and Matt Smith, between them, as they exclude what's going on with the wider characters, but they nail the Doctor for the first time, 100%, I believe, in New Who.
Yeah, and you picked up on his physicality. I think he just climbed out of the TARDIS and he was down on his on the floor and he breathed out some regeneration fluid or vapor or whatever. And then suddenly he jumped up, didn't he, onto his the soles of his feet. The way he walks, as you said, there were so many bits. I look at his face and it's a very clever choice of actor.
That brilliant scene where he looks at Annette Crosby playing the old grandma and says, this face is usually this face, and he just stretches his face into her face. That's hilarious. That's so doctorish.
And it's clever that you mentioned the Troughton, because this man clearly can do character acting. He can do slapstick, he can do humor, he can do serious, he can do intense. This man is a hell of an actor. Now, it's easy to say now, But at the time, we were all a bit worried because we hadn't heard of him. But my God, he was good. And I have to say, it was a barnstorming introduction for an actor to the weight of the world on his shoulders to carry a whole franchise.
And that's the essence. Imagine this story with a different actor playing the Doctor. I think it's Matt Smith that sells the introductory story, which gives this its reputation more so than the story itself.
Yeah. But I suppose on Criteria one, we're saying what doctorish things were there. So, of course, it is a blur in this one because he adapted so many elements of old Doctors. A bit Castrovalva where Davison had lines of Hartnell and that. But in this one, he really sometimes appeared old. He appeared eccentric. He appeared wacky. That's why Noel and Daniel and everybody is mentioning the fish fingers and custard and all the rest of it. That was lovely. And it was a lovely bonding scene with the young Amy. That was all great stuff. So, Michelle, where would you like to go on Criteria one? Basically, was this who, and where in it did you really enjoy it? Where did you feel less so, maybe?
This is who. I mean, this feels very like Doctor Who. You see this man that instantly, even though he's just regenerating and is still cooking, there's somebody in distress and he's going to go and help. He's going to go investigate a mystery or a problem. That's very Doctor. I love the scene where he's trying to figure out the food, and the part where he takes the plate and throws it outside and says, "You stay out there." And of course, the classic, you hear a cat shrieking as he's throwing it. That's very Doctor. That madman. And you feel like he is an old person in a young man's body. You get that where you don't necessarily. There's parts of Eccleston you do. Tennant not so much, because Tennant's always is very young and dapper and the cockiness. This one you feel like he is an old person in a young person's body. He does have the physicality, the poor direction sense of a Davison, where he walks in the wrong direction, hits a tree and falls over. That's hysterical. Yet he has this very Charlie Chaplin silent era body where he can breathe. Because of course, he was an athlete in his prior life. He has that body to move and flow and be wacky with it. So yeah, it very, very, and it very feels like Doctor Who. Excellent choice. Again, like anything, there's parts of it I didn't enjoy as much, but I still enjoyed the story.
Yeah. I mean, it was just mentioned there. I've got to get the names right. I'm terrible tonight. Archibald Lazarus, the clever nod to the spearhead in space style cottage hospital. Yeah, I had
same one, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's the same location.
Yeah, I do know, Hugh. That's what I was thinking. I didn't have time today to check, but I thought that really does look like the same hospital as John Pertwee was in. I say John Pertwee, the third Doctor. We might as well come to you, Hugh, but I was just about to say one or two other things that I noticed was, I suppose you've got the overuse of sonic screwdriver slightly.
Yeah, and that turns into like the magic wand. That's what really turns into the magic wand piece that. Like the Harry Potter, and of course Harry Potter was very big when this was made. So this is that time period where they're trying to negotiate. Like, okay, the wands are selling off the shelves. Okay, so we got this sonic screwdriver.
Yeah, there was a bit of that. So as I come to you, the one other two things I just want to mention is, and it's why the spearheads from space was mentioned with the cottage hospital. But I did think there were some touches with. Yes, he's in a hospital and he gets his clothes from there. So there were little touches like that. I felt a bit Android Invasion. I felt a bit Demons in the fact that classic Doctor Who, it just uses a village scenario. The world is under threat. And it kind of works like that. When you have 1,000 or 1,000,000 Daleks and you go global and you saw Bolivian volcanoes, I think it loses an essence of Doctor Who. But I think the village... as the first port of call, but actually the whole world's going to be incinerated. I thought that's classic Who. You?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to reiterate a lot of what people said here. I think that he's not just physical in the normal sense of it, because he also resembles Norman Wisdom in terms of the sheer physicality of the comedy. And that's an unusual bit to do. He does look fantastic. He acts really oddly. He bonds well with Amelia Caitlin Blackwood in such a way that it underlines that he is childlike rather than childish.
Yeah.
And that's very important. I think, sort of like the structure of the whole thing, as you say, that bit where you jump from the village to the entirety of the world, it's all done very well. I have one sort of like small criticism in terms of something which they did in this and the next one, if I remember, which is where he starts trying to deduce what's wrong, and it all goes a bit Sherlock.
Yes. Yes.
and the doctor isn't Sherlock.
No.
It was as if he was auditioning for something, Moffat.
Yeah.
Didn't it?
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know
Right.
where that came from, but because it's actually quite like what they do with Benedict Cumberbatch as Sherlock as well. And I thought, is that Moffat doing this thing that's trying to do that? And it doesn't suit the Doctor because his deduction doesn't work in the logical fashion that Sherlock Holmes does. They are connected characters in terms of being outsiders. They're connected characters in terms of having difficulty associating with other people directly. But that's the wrong way to do it. He's a much more organic thinker than Sherlock Holmes is. And I thought that's a bit of a mistake. And I think they did it another once, but they dropped it, and that's fine. But no, I think the whole thing with this is he's astounding in it.
And in a way, he inspired the Doctor in this episode, inspires Jeff to save the world, and Amy Rory as well to sort himself out. The Doctor's character seemed to be inspiring humans to be the better version of themselves. And I thought that was a nice touch. And, good old Doctor Who making everybody feel included, that they can do something. When when I used to watch Doctor Who in the early days, you were the outsider and just seemed a bit different. There was a Home Alone vibe as well, I thought. I said Hitchhiker's also a bit of a Home Alone vibe with my auntie's out, you're a stranger in my house, there's something creepy in the bedroom. I don't know. There was, I mean, all I'm saying is there's nods to a few different things. I think the interesting one might be when we go to Criteria 2, which I'll just remind everybody. It is the choice of actors. Now, we've already kind of spilled over nicely into that one, because in this case, it is an introduction. So, of course, it will bleed over. You can mention effects if you so wish, because sometimes it's not about does it look expensive. We're not judging it on that, because that means most of Who will just lose. What we're judging is, was it well used? If you notice what's in red, everybody in the thread, we say, is it an effective use of those resources? Because actually, I would argue critically sometimes that the visual effects now that are very expensive in Doctor Who are not effectively used for the drama effect. That's my point. So I'm not just saying judge it on, is it expensive? No, that's too easy. Every week we'd be saying with Disney's money now. So where do you want to go with it, panelists? Noel, I know you like the episode, and remember, the critique is fine. This one is just choice of actors, how it was put together, what impressed you with it,
Well, we got Olivia Colman in Doctor Who, which was a pretty big coup, in my opinion. And for the little part that she had to play in it, she actually did very well. On the use of resources, well, as I said, the special effects really, they haven't really aged. I mean, that Prisoner Zero, the snaky looking thing, it did look a bit, even back then, it looked a bit fake. So that hasn't obviously lived up. But I think the direction is fantastic, because it moves along, it slows down at the right parts and then moves along at the pace that it does for the second act, I would say. Again, I'm just like, the effects really is the only issue that I have with it, but the casting was spot on. I mean, he even got Sir Patrick Moore in the episode.
Yeah.
I mean, to get him, because I used to
He didn't have his xylophone, though. He didn't have his xylophone.
Because I used to watch that show with him, Patrick Moore. What was it? Go on. Used to watch it all the time, and I watched it just for him, because he was a fascinating man. I used to love him talking about space and the stars and stuff like that. Sky at Night, is that what it was called? Yeah.
Yes.
And if you're looking for someone who fits into the character of the Doctor, Patrick Moore talking about space is one of those characters.
And
Yeah.
Patrick Moore did like science fiction. He did. In fact, I'm trying to think if he did actually write a story or two, because he really did love it.
Yeah.
No, and I love those touches with New Who. Actually, New Who has managed to get people in almost as cameos sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's
Brian Cox done it too.
Yes. So Noel, yes, I mean, Noel, I want to come back on this one. Olivia Colman. Now, is this a mistake by Stephen Moffat that she wasn't in it more, or do you think it? We just because everybody now says, "Oh my God, you had Olivia Colman, but she was hardly used."
Yeah, I would say that was probably one of Moffat's biggest mistakes. Actually, I mean, you've got an actress of her caliber, and you don't utilize her much in the episode. But the bits that she is in, she's absolutely fantastic. And she was even one of those slated to become the Doctor when Chibnall was show running. And again, if you were going to go with a female Doctor, even though I believe that it's a male role, but if you were going to go down that route, Olivia Colman wouldn't have been a bad show or a bad actress to give a chance to play the Doctor. But I love Olivia Colman. I love acting she's in. I watched her even before she was in Doctor Who. So I think she's a great talent. I would love to see her in Doctor Who in the future, because it's Doctor Who, it's a sci-fi show. So, I mean, you could find a way of, bringing her back, or maybe bring her back as a different character. But I think the supporting cast in this is brilliant. You even got your woman from One Foot in the Grave. What's the actress's name?
Annette Crosby.
Yeah,
who was 90 earlier this week.
Yeah, she's absolutely brilliant in it, and she only has a small part in it, but she's very good in as well. I mean, the only thing that I can really, if I was to put my finger on it, that the special effects, I suppose, Prisoner Zero, in the snake thing, not Olivia Colman, and I thought that was very clever, even with the dog and the coma patients. See, that was all clever. So be the special effects on that only, and I mean, he did, the screwdriver. He didn't get to use the screwdriver much in this one, because remember, the screwdriver gets damaged in this one, so he has to really think on his on his feet this time. So
Can I ask you, Noel? Because obviously I've heard what Hugh said about the Sherlock effect, which I agreed with as a problem. But I want to link up with the thread again and come back to you, Noel, on this one. What did you think, Noel, regarding this? I've got to find it. That would always help. It was the clicky effect. I think I'm trying to find where it was. I think it was Review It Yourself said it. There it is. So this is the Sherlock moment, isn't it? I tell you what I loved, the kind of clicky camera movements, very Enemy of the State. Now, you can see it's one of those Marmite moments. It was very well directed, again, fine, but it's just, I think me and Hugh were saying it looked akin to another program that was being made. What did you think, Noel, of that kind of direction for Doctor Who?
I don't mind the camera move. I don't mind when they try new things with cameras and stuff as well. Even with the newer Star Trek movie that they made, they did this lens flare thing, and everybody was giving out about it. But I actually thought it gave it a nice little touch, and the camera angles that they actually used in that were very interesting. I have no problem with directors trying new stuff with Doctor Who. I think you should take risks with Doctor Who. It's not going to always work. But again, RTD did this whole thing where the camera would pan down towards the earth and then into to Rose's bedroom, and then Moffat kind of carried that thing on as well. So I mean, again, I like when they try. It's not always going to work, but I don't mind them trying something new. It just shows that they're actually thinking about it. You know what I mean? And as a fan, I'll always give praise if they try. It's not always going to work out, of course, but I think this is one of the times where it does. I don't mind the different camera angles. I think it's very well done.
And as Doctor Who fans, we know we've had Invasion of the Dinosaurs, experimentation with CSO, and we all love it. This is what Doctor Who did. It was always pushing the boundaries. It was always trying new things, and then Top of the Pops would copy versions of it. Michelle, what would you like to say about criteria 2 overall? I'll just show the people in the thread while you talk for a second.
I just think the actors is what really wins on this episode. The supporting cast is wonderful. The main cast is wonderful. Everyone does a fantastic job. It's really what solidified this era for being so popular was the strength of the 3 main actors. Even some of the CGI is a little dodgy, but that Prisoner Zero was still creepy looking. I think particularly creepy is when he was masking as the other people, and then you see the teeth, the vampire-esque teeth would come out, that really creepy teeth. That was effective. The use of the alien not sure who should talk, so it has the dog talking or the kid talking wrong. I thought that was creepy.
Right, John?
Yeah, well, trying to look at this from a different angle and yet gather all these criteria together. I think what's really good about this story is how that if you take that is still got basically the same team working on it, including Murray Gold writing the music. It manages to make it look very distinct from what had come before. Those opening scenes in Amy's garden precisely make the point that, and it's mentioned, the fairy tale quality of this. Whereas Russell Davis's area was very much on earth, soap opera, sort of filmed a la almost like EastEnders or Emmerdale or whatever. Here, there is a certain Tim Burton quality to the direction, to the filmography, to the lighting, to the way everybody's working together. And it really does give Doctor Who a completely different look. So in addition to getting the new Doctor, in addition to having a new showrunner, they actually make the show look and sound different, even though it's most of the same team, including the incidental music from Murray Gold as well. It just sounds a lot gentler, less bombastic. It's the first time we get to hear the 11th Doctor's theme, and we're all going to grow very wary of that before the end. But nonetheless, it's really, really good to hear it in its first iteration here. So the only criticism I make of the director, apart from the early one I made, what was about the choice of shot going up Karen Gillan's legs, is the shot of the new TARDIS when we get inside the TARDIS for once. He directs very well. We get Matt Smith and Karen Gillan showing a wonderful sense of wonderment on their faces about, as the 11th Doctor says, what have you got for me this time? But we are not allowed to share in that because we're given random shots, bits of console, or bits of wall, or bits of TARDIS furniture. We're not given very often big expansive shots or tracking shots inside it to show off this new console. And that doesn't match up with the wonderment and absolute, Karen Gillan's working her socks off in that scene. It's almost, she looks as though she's about to cry at one point when the interior of the TARDIS is revealed to her. And that's so Doctor Who, and it's so wonderful, and it's great to see. And it's a shame the director lets her down in terms of his choice of shots. But to go back to the positive, let's remember the fact that, yes, this manages to make this new Doctor's era look totally different, sound totally different, and feel totally different from the 4 years that had come before.
And coming on that, it is an interesting point on the effective use of sometimes, as you say, the same resources. Murray Gold, for example, I loved the music, the way he played. Amy's a little girl, and
beautiful.
Yes, beautiful. It was like I call it a circling keyboard. It was like, wow, it was and when I've got the soundtrack now, I listen to that. It's very pretty and lovely, but it was different. Like the theme tune version is different.
Yeah, I'm not so fussed on the theme tune, to be honest with you.
No,
because
I'm not.
This version of the theme tune sort of adds a melody that doesn't belong there and
Yeah.
takes out the bass line, which is very typically Doctor Who that you remember with, and you've got to sort of really listen. But to go back to the positive, what the job of music in any series is to accentuate the drama and to bring the viewer in. And what that does is absolutely sell Amelia Pond, those initial scenes, Amelia Pond, as a lonely little girl. And her wait for the Doctor is heartrending.
Yeah.
And the music really complements that. So hats off to Murray Gold. Well done, him.
And on the criteria too, I'm going to actually say about we've had a few niggles, and I think they're quite right with some of the writing with innuendo, but where I think it was cleverly crafted and there's some lovely touches is he is very good at. He did it with the silence, didn't he? Which is something's there, but you're not aware of it. In this one, it's the corner of the eye, and kids love that kind of. You always think you see something from the corner of your eye, and he's playing and all those lovely little tricks. That's good writing. I like that. And, he's done it with a lot of things. He's a clever writer. The Vashta Narada, Shadows, Stephen Moffat understands kids and their fears. And so I thought that was good writing. So that would hit my criteria too, big time. I said earlier when we were talking about the dialogue, I didn't love the bit, but as John was saying, it was so sad and poignant when you heard young Amelia saying, everybody says that to me, and then the Doctor gets to say, I'm the Doctor, I'm not people, although he then lets her down. Lovely little touches, and he is clever. He's a timey-wimey guru, isn't he? Because of course,
I'm going to disagree with you. I'm so sorry to interrupt. I really am.
Well, just let me give my example.
He doesn't let her down, though. He doesn't let her down. He comes right back because he gets it wrong, and that's so Doctorish.
Yeah, well, let me finish the example, which is the
red button.
I know, where is it when you need it? No, the apple, the carved out apple, which he showed as a child, and then as a man. It's clever timey-wimey stuff from Stephen Moffat, and he can do it well. I mean, look at the Day of the Doctor, how he blooming crafted all that together is beyond me. So, and I did say early doors that this had a very clever arc to it. It was pretty, it was lovely and well done. So yeah, on criteria 2, I'm scoring big here. But John mentioned it, which is why I clicked like mad to get to this shot. What was everybody's thoughts about this iteration of the TARDIS interior? Because I actually do like this one. It's just I don't think it was used enough. But anyway, what are your thoughts, Michelle?
It's too busy for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand why people will love it because everyone's going to love something different. To me, it's just a little too busy and a little too dark.
Okay, Hugh?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's individually the bits are quite good, but it's just overly stuffed.
Yeah, I know. There's something about it I liked, and I think it's because I read about the people who made the actual glass in the time wrote a bit, and they put this glass company, crafted it very carefully, and no director really ever showed it.
No, they don't.
No,
no.
yeah.
My problem with this TARDIS is, it's too busy, but also it changes the dynamic of what the TARDIS should be, because I don't know if it's a problem with the set or a problem with the way it was directed and shot, is that it gives the impression that the console is to the right of the TARDIS rather than the center. So you don't really get to see, the fact that this is the central control console. It gives the motion. It's raised from the floor quite high up and to the right as you look at it. So it seemed a little bit different from previous TARDISes, but my big bugbear about it is the fact that it's just too busy.
Peter Harrington says, for me, it's a junkyard within the TARDIS. It's one way of looking at it, I dare say. So I'll get rid of that now. I do this sometimes. I sometimes chuck off a panelist instead of the PowerPoint. So, right, okay. Let's take a look at criteria number 3 to remind everybody in our thread, if you're new to the show. This one is where we judge, really, did it engage you? If Doctor Who episodes have different types of genre sometimes they go for horror, sometimes they go for fun, sometimes they go for fantasy, etc. Did it do what it wanted to do? Did it establish the mood, etc. And I will look at the ratings briefly at the end anyway. So starting on that one, Noel, again, it's where did it grab you? Where did it, if it was trying to scare you, where did it do that? If it made you really happy and satisfied, where did it do it, you know?
Well, I think again it meets all the criteria there. Look, I love this from start to finish. When he crashes in the garden, comes
Yeah.
out of the TARDIS, bangs off the tree, goes into the house, and then obviously then we he goes back. Amy's a lot older, and then he figures out there's something going on. I mean, the Prisoner Zero stuff was like if you're a kid watching that, and you know you're at that scene where the Doctor is in the bedroom with Amelia, and he's talking about the crack in the wall, and you can hear something that scared the crap out of you. Now, obviously, I was a little bit older, but it was creepy. I did find the whole Prisoner Zero concept to be creepy. Again, you know, I think it slowed down when it needed to. I think it picked up the pace when it needed to, and I think it had some scary elements in it. So again, I didn't mention actually Murray Gold's music in this. It's actually pretty good, I have to say. And to top it all off, that final scene at the end where he's up on the roof. I mean, when he tells the what are they called again? When he tells the feckin' things to come back, and then they scan.
The attract me.
Yeah.
Things
And then you see all the images of all the old doctors, and then it kind of it goes away, and then Matt Smith moves forward, and he goes, he does says whatever, and then he goes basically run. That just gave me goosebumps. I was like, oh yes, this is the Doctor I've always wanted. No nonsense. Here we go. Bring it on. Seriously, I've nothing bad to say about this. I can't think of it. She's brilliant. By the way, that's Karen Gillan's cousin, isn't it?
Yes,
it is, yes.
Yeah.
And she
Brilliant
looks,
as Amelia Bond. Yeah, do you know what? Actually, I will say this. If I had one bone of contention, just to go back, my bone of contention would be that it's just a pity that little Amelia didn't have a few minutes in the TARDIS, maybe. I thought that would have been a lovely little moment, but it never transpired, unfortunately. So, yeah, but I love this story. I mean, it was a slight reboot as well. And, you know, Moffat had laid the threads to things to come. So I think it achieved everything, kept me engaged, definitely. I mean, I couldn't wait to watch the episode a week later. I was fully like, yeah, come on, this Moffat era is going to be. But obviously, we'll get into it as we go along.
So what you're saying, Noel, is whether it engaged you or not, it didn't leave you feeling like that.
No, I was engaged all the way through. I wasn't bored for 1 second. I was glued. I was glued to the screen, and that's what. And then listen, if a Doctor Who episode can do that and keep you interested and keep basically after this episode, I wanted to see more of what Moffat had to offer for Doctor Who, and you know, I think his fourth season. If you look at it, I don't think he disappoints. I don't think he fails. Actually, I think he delivers on his fourth season. So yeah, I was pretty stoked. I thought, you know, we're going into a 50th anniversary. This feels different. You know, Doctor Who might finally properly be global, and the American audience lapped Matt Smith up straight away. I mean,
this is one that went to stratospheric height, was the Matt Smith era, and when he left the show, it didn't recover in the United States. It still hasn't recovered. Yeah, this was the time period where all the college girls went crazy. I mean, there used to be a restaurant in Fredericksburg that was college run, and you go into the stalls in the bathroom, and all the college girls had written their graffiti, and there's tons of Doctor Who graffiti in there. Bad Wolf, the I like fezzes, bow ties are cool. Somebody even went and drew the DW logo from the time period that kind of looks like the TARDIS. So this one, it was the height of the show.
I thought Michelle in the end, and you can obviously only speak for America. Well, oh, that's not bad. 300 million. I'm giving you that credit. There you go. But if I actually thought that Matt Smith was the one who went more global than David Tennant.
He was. That's what I'm saying. He was the. This is when it went absolutely crazy. This is when they went to. It started during the Tennant era when they did their first Comic-Con and got mobbed. But this is the period of it went absolutely gonzo, and that's when they came to the United States to film some of the episodes where it was absolutely. You could walk into Hot Topic, which is the teeny bopper store, and there was, Doctor Who stuff everywhere. Walk into Barnes and Nobles, which is our bookstores, Doctor Who stuff everywhere. This was the period where it was big. And the girls wearing the bow tie and the Matt Smith cosplay outfits and the dresses. This is when it was at its highest, and ever since the last Matt Smith episode, it went down, and that's where Main Rachel Capaldi didn't have a fair shake because he was considered to be too old, because the teeny bopper girls dropped off the show, and that's when the ratings went back to normal again. And that's where they started like, oh, we need to change the show completely and bring in a woman again to change the show, which it wasn't fair. It was just a natural progression of the show.
This is what's interesting, Michelle, isn't it? That basically it started with Tennant, but definitely sealed the deal with Matt Smith.
Yeah,
because we won these younger generation of fans, as they won us when we were younger. But it's as if they didn't know the history of Doctor Who because they expected then a younger Doctor. When we always knew John Pertwee would turn into, well, we didn't know it would happen, but we accepted it. And Tom Baker would. Peter Davison did get a bit young, I have to say, and I even as a teenager was thinking, is he a bit young? I like an older Doctor. Isn't it funny? As a teenager, I wanted an older Doctor. And it didn't help that Peter Davison's Doctor was always getting henpecked by Tegan and all the rest of it. However, when you look now, it seems to be, as you said, Michelle, that we can't go back. And poor Capaldi just was too late to allow us to do that.
Yeah, and also you also see that with some of the Jodie Whittaker fans who don't understand the show was about change and being upset when Tennant came back. There has always been that contingent of fans who are short-lived. They're there for a Doctor. There's plenty of U.S. fans. There are only Baker fans and didn't like it when the show changed and when left watching it on PBS. There's always going to be those short-lived fans, and I think the problem now the show is being trying to appeal too much to the short-lived fan, the fan who doesn't understand the history of the show, and they're trying to keep it as something appealing for the next generation of young teeny bopper.
I completely agree with you on that. I think that's the concern, that we're now chasing a market that is
we're chasing the people who when Gaga, this was their first celebrity crush. This is the people that were, that's what we're chasing now.
Yeah, and maybe that's the whole of media and the whole of how people view things. But people are more fickle. And now, as I come to Hugh, because I do, there's a little tidbit here, everybody, folks. So what's the review itself? And he said he's going to edit a podcast tonight, but he's delayed it because he's enjoying the discussion. I think, Brendan, the writing went downhill fast. There's some great speeches from 12, but overall his run was very forgettable. Everybody's opinion counts. Can I just say, Noel said it, and I was actually thinking, Hugh, before we come to you, that, again, I'm trying to see the seeds that are maybe sown. That speech at the end, I am the Doctor, and I do like the scene. And it is very dramatic and it works. So let me just park that. But it was akin to Pandorica Opens on Stone Age. And that was a problem to me. Anyway, Hugh, your judgment of this on the third criteria?
Yeah, so I think part of it, from my point of view, is a lot of it's been said. It's really good and it works. I think a couple of things in terms of the plotting with the actors. So when it's been mentioned earlier that Olivia Colman didn't have much to do, well, neither did Annette Crosby, neither did Nina Wada, and Arthur Cox, who's there as continuity as well, doesn't get to do anything. I think it rushes through a lot of things. I think if I remember, this is just over the hour, which is one of the reasons why it's called the 11th hour. Yeah. I think it could have done with another 10 minutes to try and create some of the stuff. The scene in the hospital where the coma patients suddenly talk just seems to me like a rip-off of the fifth series of Buffy. Maybe a tribute from Moffat, but it just felt like that. And in the end, there wasn't resolution because the Prisoner Zero appears out of the crack, but the crack's really got nothing to do with Prisoner Zero's in terms of that. It then reappears at the end. The tracks never come back. I have no idea what Prisoner Zero was, although possibly in some weird relationship to the creatures in Wide Blue Yonder. It's the resolution of it, I suppose, just doesn't gel for me, and that's the problem I have with it on first viewing. So what I was going to do is I won't judge it in terms of the criteria overall on what happened afterwards, because I think that's not fair to the programme. But watching it, it was always, I'm not sure that's been resolved and I don't know quite what happened there.
Is it true though, Hugh? I want this sorted out now. Is it true, Hugh, that you like this episode because it raised your property prices in London? Because, hey, folks, we learned that Hugh lived in one of these buildings. Have I found your building?
You haven't. You're slightly too late. So that's too late as well. That one, stop there, Brendan. That's fine. So, if you see that there's the normal Big Canary Wharf one, just ahead of the dock, and then to the left there is a building with a light on it. Can't quite see it clearly there, but beside just across from the Millennium Dome. I was watching it in that building as that happened, and I still missed the damn TARDIS.
And
I can see my house from here.
Yeah. So you saw Matt Smith? No, hanging out. No. Well, there you go, folks. You know, we do tidbits on this show. You know, and Hugh immediately sold his property and because he was seen in BBC episode. There you go. But it was a good little sequence. It set the tone. It set a problem. The woman who fell to earth copies this, to be honest. And I'm sick of crash landing TARDISes. I mean, honestly, how can a doctor really get out of that scenario? Really? Come on. It's Superman again. And the doctor was always having to think of something very Blue Peter. He had to work something out with a bit of cardboard and a fuse and stuff.
So the other aspect to this, and that this is judging it with the sort of hindsight thing, is that he is not in control of the TARDIS there. We know that the TARDIS takes him to where she thinks he should go. So she's taken him to that place. But then that, again, the crack in the wall is not just about this part of the show. And that becomes a problem. And it's just, I say, I won't judge it on the fact that it's the silence must fall and the Pandoric opens and stuff like that, which I think are okay as references. But the crack in the wall, I think, is something that becomes problematic. But in terms of, I think that the Prisoner Zero and Atraxi, there wasn't enough of them to make any sense in the end.
Yeah. I mean, as I come to John, the crack in the wall as an idea, because it's about engagement, isn't it? I mean, I'm thinking of the kids and everything. I reckon it must be a very scary crack in the wall. I love that bit of dialogue because she's a spirited young girl, is Amelia, and the doctor works her out. We said last week how Rose's character was being tested by the Ninth Doctor in the dialogue, and here I found a similar thing going on, that she's a very spirited, brave girl to have this stranger in the house, and she asks him questions, and then he comes back and says, it must be a very scary crack in the wall. And I thought, yeah, too blooming right. This girl doesn't get scared easily, clearly. The echoing voice, Prisoner Zero has escaped through the crack. I thought that there was more tension in it than actually some of the recent Doctor Who's. So I'll give it credit for that, because this early period of the episode really does build up the tension. I think that really works. It's really nice with the younger Amelia Pond, I think. That really is a nice sequence. And And then I'll come to the snake monster because we haven't mentioned that. But John, you've obviously got the whole episode to wrap up regarding your criteria on did it engage you?
There's no point. We've had a long discussion here on this criterion. A lot of what I could have said has been said, so I don't want to waste too much or spend too much time on this. Yes, it did engage me. There's an awful lot to criticise here because seeds were sown, and pretty big seeds at that, about what was to become problematic about the Moffat era in Doctor Who. I quite buy into the whole crack thing. If I had been a kid watching this, I would have felt a bit cheated. And I was trying to remember back whether I thought that had been resolved because it seemed to be about Prisoners Era. It's not made clear that this is an ongoing thing at all. And I'm thinking to myself, and I was generous to Moffat and think that maybe that was his intention. And it's not until later on in the season that it reappears. I don't know whether or not Stephen Moffat had at the time decided what he was going to do regarding this. I don't think he had, to be honest with you, because when it's all resolved at the end of the time of the Doctor, it's all pretty messy and it's far too much for him to wrap up. So he's opened up too many chapters for him to close near the end of his time. But again, that's judging it not on the episode, but what it becomes. But I can judge it for the fact that he's left too many things, too many balls getting juggled here for it to have any sort of good outcome in the end. But yes, it did engage. More importantly, it did engage the wider audience because they came back for more. And if you like rebooting the reboot, it does it exceptionally well. And we have not really mentioned Karen Gill and Arthur Darvill in this.
Yeah.
They are probably the best double act of male and female we've had since Harry and Sarah. Well, probably the only double act since Harry and Sarah, if you don't include Adric and Nissa. But yeah, the two are fantastic. They really have a great synergy. They work well together. They bounce off each other terribly well, and that only gets better as the time in the program continues. So yeah, engages well because essentially the audience came back for more and more, not just the British audience, but the international audience. But yeah, we are left with that thing now that Doctor Who seems to have to be a preppy doctor, a young doctor, a sort of handsome doctor that young girls and young men, I dare say as well, are supposed to fall for, which is not the premise, not the initial premise anyway, of what the character's about. And ultimately, that's why Peter Capaldi partially came a cropper amongst some of these new fans, and also because he wasn't able to support it by the trips either. But that's jumping way ahead.
Yeah, I think though. Sorry, on you go, Michelle.
So yeah, at the time, I remember reading on like the chat boards, like he's too old, he's not good looking. I wish I'm done with the show because X, Y, and Z. And mainly it was because I don't fancy, romantically, people didn't fancy.
We obviously didn't understand what Doctor Who was then.
No,
fad for them. Yeah.
And you see the same thing with some of the Jodie Whittaker fans. It's the same thing. We're not as much as.
Yeah, there's a fantasy that you want in, Nuki in the TARDIS with Yaz and the 13th Doctor. You fancy the Matt Smith Doctor. Peter Capaldi's too old. David Tennant was all right. This is and Shooty's in underpants. So yeah, we're serving this market at the moment. RTD's normally good at this with his unit soldiers, but I did think that was good casting as well. Good old Jeff. That wasn't bad to look at. But I will say, let's just as we wrap up this final bit on criteria 3 here and whether it engaged. What did you think? I heard what you said for criteria 2 about the monster and the graphics. What did you actually think of this as an alien? I'll just pan them through. Shout up anything. I mean, this is a bit
Kenda.
Do you know what I thought, John?
That's creepy.
Do you know what I thought, John, with this snake? And I thought of the movie, the snake in the cost. When it left the TARDIS, it cracked open and then there was some.
The master snake, you mean?
Yeah, which was creepy, and then that was interesting graphics. I
thought that was a better effect of a TV movie than that was.
Yeah,
I think the problem with that snake is it looks half finished because you never found you never saw the end. You never saw the end of this snake. It's almost as if they couldn't be bothered to or couldn't afford to design the sort of second half of it. So it you saw it dangling, but not from what or with what, you know.
I mean, and as fans, you know what we're like. We can accept really rubbish effects, can't we?
Oh yeah,
As I mean, this bit here, I mean, was very like the puppets behind Donna Noble, except this went on for longer, and therefore Stephen Moffat built up the tension better because. Yes. As you know, he was handcuffed to the radiator, was the Matt Smith doctor, so he couldn't help her. He was shouting, so the shouting was helping build it up. It was panto behind you, you know, and all that sort of thing. That's what we are missing in Doctor Who, I think, a bit more of that. But yes, as a visual effect, it wasn't the best in the world, but it gets the imagination going, and that's what we Doctor Who fans seem to work well on, isn't it? Is the imagination. Anybody else got any thoughts on the actual alien in this episode?
I say, it's just that whole thing where the alien is a cipher, and it's done well, but you don't know why it's there. You don't know why the Atraxia after it. It just doesn't gel. And then at the end, you get to see another crack.
Yeah. Anybody else got any thoughts on this one? Don't have to drag it out. John is just loving this. Honestly, this little blip we have in the software is really working to his advantage.
I'll say one thing just to add, sort of like in terms of the appeal of Matt Smith, was I got to see the Christmas special with Moffat and Matt Smith with the Doctor, the Wife, and the Wardrobe one. Yeah. And the number of kids who were there dressed up as Matt Smith was quite extraordinary.
Yeah.
Because he does have that appeal, as say, it's childlike rather than childish. And that whole scene with Amelia, he does have an appeal to kids that I think is more so than any other of the Doctors we've seen.
Since Tom Baker.
And Matt Smith as an actor was wonderful with the children. I think back to the one where the lodger, where the kid's about being dyslexic, and he makes some joke. Well, I can't do it. Was some food thing? He says, well, I can't do that either. Kind of like
Hugh's spot on there, Brendan, because I'm just reminded, and it must be up in the attic somewhere, that when I was teaching and the children knew I was a Doctor Who fan, a big Doctor Who fan of that, during the Matt Smith era, at Christmas time, they clubbed together and bought me a fez. They gave me a fez for as a Christmas present. So I thought that was brilliant. And not only did it prove the fact that they respected my choice in television programs, but they absolutely understood the program and watched it and got this iconography of it for this particular era. Anyway, it was great. But Matt Smith, absolutely, the Doctor, the most child-friendly Doctor, if you like, since Tom Baker.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, Michelle, and that's kind of one of the links, isn't it? Which is, yes, Tom Baker grabbed us all at the time with the scarf and everything, as well as his acting, of course, and his characterization. But there was iconography there, and I do wonder since then. I mean, the cricket one was obvious, but it didn't catch on at the time. I know there's cosplay now, but this fez and the bow tie really caught on. And obviously, I was teaching too, and I'm teaching teenagers. And yes, John, it seems to go through from the early years all the way through. And I was at a convention last year in Blackpool, and the amount of kids, I was sat next to Colin Baker, and the amount of kids who were still dressed as Matt Smith's Doctor. Yeah. Because I always think it must be funny. Colin Baker's the only one at the convention, but you dress up like another one. I always find that interesting. But they obviously identified with this Doctor because of his physicality and that.
It happens so naturally too. Again, like the scarf, it's not a created costume. Jonathan Tennant didn't understand that these things have happened sort of naturally. They shouldn't be imposed on the character. And I think Matt Smith actually, apart from making bow ties cool, he made them popular. And wasn't One Direction the pop group of the time? Didn't he start sort of wearing bow ties purely because the 11th Doctor had popularized them? Is that not a fact?
I think I've heard that. And also I was going to say Matt Smith as a person has been and still is a great brand ambassador.
Yeah.
For Doctor Who.
His
interactions with children and fans or just on the street from the stories I've heard are amazing. how he will interact with kids. And I saw one time at a con where the people were supposed to pay, and he ran into a kid, and he stopped, and his people were trying to push him around. He stopped. He signed that kid's autograph. He talked to the kid, and then moved on.
So I just ask Noel this question. Noel, you can see Archibald Lazarus has put this on the thread. Not giving Shooty a costume theme was a bit of a mistake. Now, we're talking about the fez. We're talking about the bow tie. Do you actually think as a point that Archibald Lazarus is onto something?
Yeah, definitely with Shooty's Doctor. I don't think there's no denying that well, all the promotional clips and the trailers that we've seen and the photographs, he seems to be out of he doesn't seem to have a settled costume, a permanent costume. He seems to be changing clothes quite a lot. You know, I think again, it's a miscalculation for me, because everybody's been talking about Matt Smith and all the young kids, you know, dressing up as him, and even the adults dressing up as Matt Smith's Doctor. Doctor Who fans love the cosplay, right? And with this Doctor, it just seems like they didn't want to put him in a permanent costume, and you know, the fans can decide which kind of costume he's in. They can cosplay, and I think that misses the point, really. You know, so I like me Doctors to have the same costume. Matt Smith's costume is nothing amazing. What, John?
Sorry to interrupt. You know, you're like a silhouette. It doesn't have to be the same thing. It just, they have a look which, in silhouette form, you know exactly who they are.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, Matt Smith's costume is not anything amazing, but you know, I think the later he tweaks the costume later on, doesn't he? Has a longer jacket, which I think actually suits his Doctor better than the tweed jacket that he has there. But you know, I like Matt Smith's costumes. I thought they were really, really good. But I really do think you should have something similar each week. I mean, Christopher Eccleston's costume was the same, except his T-shirt. His T-shirt used to change depending on whether he was traveling in the past or traveling in the future. People don't actually, if you look back, you'll see he changes his T-shirt from one color to the next. That's to signify whether he's in the past or he's in the future. So there's little things like that he did in Doctor Who that I really like, that feel like are being removed now with this current iteration of Shooty's Doctor. But again, we haven't seen anything yet, so we'll say he might have a permanent costume, but by the looks of things, it doesn't look like it.
Yeah, well, our final thing on our discussion is just to have a quick look at the ratings, because if we're judging it on its engagement, well, how did the ratings go? So let's take a look. Oh, I can see you like it. Yes. He loves the attention, doesn't he? So anyway,
I'm just missing my maracas.
Well, first of all, the line graph there, and it's the most interesting line graph when you actually look at each Doctor, is the Matt Smith's iteration. It says it flatlines, it gently ascends slightly, but you can see there's a lot of peaks above that. And that one of the peaks is actually obviously the first episode, as well as his last one. He's a very consistent era. Maybe that falls into what Michelle was saying about going global and American, and they got him. Maybe it means me and John saw it in teaching that across the generation, the kids kind of identified with this Doctor. But there you go. If you could, you know, Tennant started to build, you can see, but the consistency was there across the board. It was only after him that, as we said, it started to crash. So regarding this episode, the 11th Hour got 6.7 million viewers, a 34% share, and then its final rating was 10 million. You know, they do the consolidated and everything. Now, you know, we know our comparisons. We know that actually the Star Beast didn't hit that. We know that we've been in the 9s and we've been lower, and they've been trying to add, 48 days, 64 days, and they're trying their best. This isn't bad. I have to say, I thought at the time, and when you look at it now, it was a strong start. What was really weird, I can't remember if it was you, John, talking about setting the scene for the second episode. This surprised me. The second episode got 6.7 million. It actually dropped like sorry, I've quoted the wrong figures. I do apologize, Brendan. 10 million was the overnights and 6.7 was Beast Below. Yeah, what a drop. I do think if we're judging this episode, this seemed to be successful. I will ask you all, obviously, about your ratings in a minute, but wow, that's a hell of a drop. I don't know if there's a football match on or something, but
yeah, I think you'd have to look at what happened there, because I don't think that doesn't feel like a logical drop.
No,
No.
That's Easter time. That may well have been Easter weekend. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah.
It says it was still the far most watched scheduled program, probably scripted program of the day, beating his nearest rival by nearly 1 million viewers.
Yeah.
The Beast Below was a cracking episode to follow up with as well. So that drop seems you've got to whatever date that dropped on, look at what was on TV at the time, because clearly there was something else on. Because that drop isn't logical. Everybody is right. I mean, you've dropped 4 million, just over 4 million people over one week. No.
I think the chances are that may well have been Easter weekend, because it's that time of year.
Probably.
There must have been something.
Logical explanation.
And I will give the credit. I think it's important that we do say, you can see from that actually it's the most consistent era. And so, you have peaks and troughs, you have World Cups, you have Easter, as John says, you have various events. But his era seemed to kind of just keep the Doctor Who franchise on the right road. So the judgment seems to have been that actually the fans did like this era and did like the start. So it means we now get to the scores on the doors, so to speak. If I just kind of get myself ready with my paddle, so to speak. So basically, we judge this, as everybody who might get used to us now, on 3 criteria, and we have 4 levels. Outstanding, we have good overall, we have needs a bit of improvement, and we have special measures, which is a teacher term for absolute disaster, shut the school, disaster. So if I start with myself, I am judging this one as good overall. I know we said outstanding last week. I'm being consistent in my own self, and that's important, I think, for people watching us, that I saw Rose as good overall, but obviously the most of the panel did say outstanding, so we went with that as a collective. But I don't see this as better than Rose or worse than Rose, and I didn't feel it was outstanding. So that's where I stand, and that's just that once. Okay, so I seem to be hitting all the wrong buttons here. That's always classic me. Nothing's changed.
Yes,
Nothing's changed. So John, since it's now where would you go on your judgment of this episode overall?
Yeah, I think I'll have to agree with you, Brendan. Overall, it's good. It's a very, apart from the quibbles that we had about some of the writing choices, some of the directorial choices, what this does is successfully reinvent Doctor Who and introduce us, as I say, to the most doctor-esque Doctor that New Who had at that point. So would it have me coming back for more? Yes, absolutely it would. So it's good overall, in the same way that later on in the 13th Doctor's era, most certainly wasn't. So although I'm critical of certain aspects of the story, absolutely, it's a story I would quite happily watch again.
Okay, so as I come to Michelle, it's throwing me in different directions. It's according to my little PowerPoint list here. Don't worry, it helps. So Michelle, I'm going to ask you, but just as I come to you, I can see that Michael Nemo, I'm in the minority. Matt Smith is my second to the bottom favourite Doctor. I found 11th Hour boring. Look, all opinions are allowed on here. That's the point. We are not an echo chamber. We don't always agree. Go and look at a few other episodes, but then we don't. Michelle, where do you stand on this?
I'm going to go a good episode. I came away with that just going, it's a good episode. It's not outstanding, but it's good. I'll definitely rewatch it again. It was a good start to an era, but it's not outstanding in my point of view. But it's good. There's lots of it I liked. So
Okay. Thank you for that. Noel, I'm coming to you according to my listing here, right? So that's the way I do it. So Noel, where do you stand on this episode?
Well, I'm probably going to be the only one on the panel that's going to say it was outstanding because of what came after and the fact that the episode had laid a lot of the foundations that what was to come. I'm not highly critical of some of the stuff that Moffat did. There is stuff during the Moffat era that really did irritate me, and I suppose if we do more Moffat stories, you'll probably find out what some of those irritations were. But this, for me, was outstanding. So, I mean, I'm trying to think of something that I could say, yeah, that really got on me with Wick, but nothing did. I love this story. I absolutely love it. I think Matt Smith. Listen, if I was to do a stream, I have done streams on just Matt Smith alone. There's so much more to Matt Smith, his doctor. A lot of his acting and a lot of his emotions are in his eyes, and he's brilliant. He can suck you into a scene, and the emotion that he delivers during his era is absolutely fantastic. Now, there's some cringe-worthy moments. I do agree with you. Someone mentioned Stonehenge earlier. We'll get to that if we do that episode, but I thought that was way over the top and absolutely ridiculous. Actually, those last two episodes I have a huge problem with, so I hope you do actually those at some stage, because I got plenty to say about the Pandorica Opens and the other one. Oh no, the one before that, and the Pandorica Opens, or whatever it's bleeding called. Absolutely annoyed me to beyond end. But this episode, just on its own, it delivered everything for me, and it was completely outstanding. And Matt Smith was amazing. And you know what? In some ways, if you were going to bring a doctor back, you know, if you wanted to do the 60, it should have been Matt Smith, in my opinion, not David Tennant. I'm sick of David Tennant now at this stage. But Matt Smith would have been a lovely little surprise. I think he connects with a lot of fans across the board, not just old fogies like myself, but the younger fans as well. And I think if he did come back, he'd actually win over a brand new set of younger fans. I think he has that appeal. He's absolutely amazing. He's been what he was. Listen, he's up there as one of the best doctors, in my opinion.
Well, there's a fair few in the thread who are saying that. Review It Yourself has followed our criteria and is saying outstanding for him. So he's agreeing with you there, Noel. So far we've had me good, John good, Michelle good, Review It Yourself outstanding, Noel outstanding. So I go to Hugh now. Let me just get myself in order, Hugh. Don't talk fast, please. Hugh, where do you stand on this one?
So I'll be another vote for good. I think it's quite close to being outstanding. I think had it had another 20 minutes to explain things and develop the characters for this episode, it would have touched it. I think I agree with sort of like with what Noel said in terms of Matt Smith and what a lot of people have said. One thing I think I'd pick up on Matt Smith is that while fezzes are cool and bow ties are cool, Matt Smith, the character of the Doctor, isn't cool, but is cool because he isn't cool.
Yeah,
absolutely. If that makes any sense.
No, it does. Spot on.
it's you're not. He's not wandering about generally fitting in well, and sort of like all of it. He's sort of, especially after David Tennant, who is cool and therefore isn't cool. But it's that he gets the Doctor right and therefore is cool, and I think that's where the appeal comes. So it's very, very close, and I think if it hadn't been quite so rushed, and if Stephen Moffat wasn't trying to fit in quite so much about the future stuff and had actually dealt with that episode and just put a bit about the future stuff, it would have been outstanding.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, you can see where we stand on this one. We leave no stone unturned, but the collective this week seems to be saying it's good overall. And yet we're allowed dissent. I was the dissenter last week. It's how it works. So basically, there you go. That's the judgment on 11th hour. That's John, in case you didn't know who he was. Look, thanks for your time again. Thanks in the thread. We'll be back on Sunday as per usual. I'm back here next Tuesday at 4 p.m. And I'll be on Noel's channel, if he lets me back, on Friday.
I would.
What I wanted to say, if I let you back, why wouldn't I be letting you back?
I wouldn't. I wouldn't.
Would you not? Do you think I should sack him, John? Would you like to take his
Push
place?
Yeah,
Press that big red button. Get rid of him.
Hold on. Yes, you're reminding me. Let me just say, yes, I might just be saying this was. I'm going to destroy the debate now. Self-destruct on the debate. We've had enough. If you've got a subscription you still haven't given us, how dare you? Remember, we're trying to help the GAM and let him get some lady friend. Away. Subscriptions get us galactic credits. Away. Help the GAM out if you don't know and help me. Thank you for your time. Thank you for those 2 hours. We'll never get them back. But anyway, it wasn't the 11th hour. It was the 11th 2 hours. But thank you, everybody. See you again, I hope. Bye.
Bow ties are cool.